This episode is brought to you by Bambi Mini Co. Snuggle ready organic cotton baby wear for playtime, sleep time and wriggle time.
It's almost 100% of couples go through such strain. Like I said before, all of these things, these life stressors, they're peaking all at the same time. It's all well and good to say we're a team, but ultimately it is hard. And, if you don't have a 50-50 balance of work and domestic life, you can come to resent different things.
Welcome to Parenthood, where each week we explore the lives of Aussie mums and dads and what's really going on behind closed doors. I'm your host, Leonia Kiddenor, mum of two, business owner and relationship coach. Let's begin.
Welcome to the show.
You touched on food there, and someone actually called in and said, my toddler is a fussy eater. I'm like, preach. And I'm worried about getting their right nutrition. And I often worry about that too. I mean, my kids had Wheat Bix for dinner last night because I was flooded. We'd just gotten back from swimming. I was exhausted. Do you love my excuses as well? Because of this and because of that, and I'm not a bad parent. But in the back of my mind, I thought, my God, like they're having Wheat Bix again. They had it this morning and my kids' body's going to wither away. Like we worry about nutrition, but it's also sometimes all just too hard. How much should we be stressing about this?
Look, I think that if it's an infrequent occurrence, you don't need to stress at all. Like I said, 80-20. If you are getting mostly healthy, clean food, lots of vegetables, not too much fruit, good protein, carbohydrate, the occasional treat, that is beautiful. And you're doing a wonderful, wonderful job. And you, like every single mother I talk to, are so hard on themselves. So the occasional slip is completely fine so long as the vast majority of the intake is generally healthy. Now, in terms of a child who's always fussy and you're always struggling to get things in, I mean, there are amazing Instagram accounts and TikTokers and these dietitians who can sneak veggies into smoothies and this and that. And, there's lots of different avenues that you can use to try to make life easier for yourself and get things in that you want your toddler to have. Multivitamins are really, really seldom needed in toddlers and children. They're promoted and they're sold and advertised as being necessary, but you really don't need to worry about them most of the time. You'd be surprised. I've got hundreds of kids with severe autism-related oral aversion and limited eating and really, really problem feeders. And they have such limited appetites for whatever reason and repertoires that are tiny. And every now and then we do blood testing to make sure that they're not deficient in anything, micro, macronutrient. And the vast majority of the time, they're completely fine. We don't know where these kids are getting their iron from and their zinc and their calcium and their phosphate, but they seem to do it. So you'd be surprised how children can actually survive on, carb-heavy diets and things like that. The other thing is don't project your own needs, your own physical needs onto your children. We need different you need different food based on the kinds of things you're doing, right? And children are doing a completely different thing to you. Yeah. They are physically growing, the vast majority of their energy is going to their brain. So, it's like comparing yourself to an Olympic athlete and then judging your intake volume. It's not like for like. So again, have the right expectation, take the pressure off yourself as a parent. Do you want to know, Leonie, the single most successful tool in the management of fussy eating?
Tell me.
Tell the parents that the child is fine. Get rid of the child's high chair. Take a towel, put it on the floor, put a whole bunch of bowls of different things on top of the towel, sit the child on the towel, you sit on the towel, and just have fun. Just don't worry about intake. Don't worry about what goes in. You're on a towel, so mess doesn't matter. And you just turn mealtime into playtime, and you'll be amazed how much the child takes in when all of a sudden the pressure is taken off. You know what? If your listeners take one thing home from this, you need to understand that anxiety tastes terrible. And if you are the parent of a fussy eater, if your child's low on the weight centiles or you're worried about their intake and you've got a spoon there of something you want them to eat but they don't want to eat, it's written all over your face. It's in your body language. I see parents that, they're so anxious when mealtime is approaching. They're terrified. They hate it. They always tell me, the child eats brilliantly at daycare, but, they really, really don't eat with me. It's because you're bringing so much concern and anxiety to the mealtime. And often when we just take that away and turn it into fun and turn it into games and do not fret about what goes in, what goes on the floor, what the dog eats, the child often turns around and takes in twice as much of things they've never eaten before.
Always that daycare. It's like they've got something special going on there. Like, oh, well, he even ate cauliflower today. I'm like, God, my kid eats cauliflower. He barely I put that near him and he's like, ew. Like, isn't that interesting? So your environment has a huge, it makes sense when you're saying it, has a huge impact on how the child feels in that moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Around other children, they might model on their behaviour, but also the childcare workers don't have as much of an emotional investment in that child finishing their entire bowl of food.
Yes.
So often, I remember on pickup from childcare, you'd see a tick on lasagna, and I'd say, my child doesn't eat lasagna. They've never eaten that ever. And then you interrogate the childcare staff, and they say, oh no, they had 3 spoons. And I would think, well, that's not, eating lasagna, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. The whole bowl of lasagna that I prepared does not need to be finished. So expectation is really, really important.
Expectation is huge, isn't it? Another one that came in as well, and I think I'd love your thoughts on this, because you see so many children, and particularly in this day and age, it's very different to when we grew up, for example, screen time. Now, do you have people, so basically the comment was, how bad is screen time for toddlers and what boundaries would you suggest? Do you have people coming to you where you're sort of like, this is becoming a bit concerning with how much screen time we might be giving the child? Like, give us a little bit of an insight.
Yeah, let's talk about a neurotypical child. Things are very different when you're talking about the neurodiverse population, which is, I guess, my patient load is a little bit skewed towards that.
Okay.
If you're talking about the neurotypical child and screen time, give up on the desire to have a 0 screen exposure child. That is not the world we live in. And I think that that's probably overkill. I think that screen time is fine if it's used for brief periods, if it's done together with a carer or parent, and ideally some sort of educational content. Now, the form of education doesn't have to be the content of the video. So if you're watching a cartoon with your child, it's absolutely fine if it's got, you're watching Peppa Pig or something, there's no educational content, but you can pause it at one point and say, hey, what would you do if that happened to you? What do you think Peppa's going to say now to her friend? Why do you think Daddy Pig is crying? And you can start to invite their curiosity, play games with them and say, you know what, we can watch another one if you can guess the colour of Daddy Pig's shoes that he's about to put on, something like that. So you can really turn it into a very interactive thing, despite the fact that you are in fact engaging with a screen. I think problems arise in 2 scenarios. Number one, where you're putting a child, directly in front of a screen and using it as a babysitter for prolonged periods. And I think the second one is a bit more challenging, and that is the modelling behaviour that we use. So if we are always connected to our phone and we're always looking and we're always listening and it's always next to us within arm's reach, what are we teaching children about how to live your life? Whereas if you sit down at the meal table and the phone is put on silent and out of sight, then there is no association between mealtime and screen. But if you're constantly looking at the phone, answering, I'll call you back, watching something, scrolling, that child has got no reason not to think that that's what you do. You're on a screen while you're eating. You're on a screen while you're a passenger in a car. You're on a screen when you're getting ready for bed. That's normal for them. So we've got to set the example and make no mistake. Children are sponges, and what they will do what they see, not what they're told to do. Remember that always.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Something that we need to be probably more aware of in general, right? Because we think we're invisible over here. Like, I'm here with my phone, scrolling, getting dinner ready or whatever. Like, I'm invisible, even though my child is at my foot asking for like texters, And it's such a valid point. There's so much more than just, we'll just set, a minimum of this amount of time on screens a day or whatever. Like, there are, so many more things that we could probably be considering adjusting. And I think this conversation is fantastic in reminding us that. Now, I want to turn to a little bit of a different topic. So this one, our podcast, often we will bring couples on to discuss, I guess, their challenges since becoming early parents. So this one is very on brand for us. Someone called in and said, my relationship has been under immense pressure since having baby number 2. I guess, is this normal? And any sort of tips? And again, I know relationships per se aren't necessarily your area, but even in speaking to, patients and their parents and things like that, if you were to come across, people that were struggling in that way, what tips would you have for them? Briefly interrupting this episode to give a shout out to our episode sponsor, Bambi Mini Co. Bambi Mini Co.'s new organic cotton baby wear has arrived. I love Bambi Mini Co. products for so many reasons. Firstly, products offer superior quality at affordable prices, starting as low as $9.99, and nothing is over $19.99. With the cost of living being what it is at the moment, this is an absolute game changer when it comes to affordable quality products. The founder is a Melbourne mum, Nikki, who has 2 kids of her own, so really understands how important it is to have baby wear that's super functional, also consciously designed and developed, and of course, cute as hell. Everything about these products has been so carefully considered, from being consciously made, think soft, cuddly, organic cotton, nickel-free snaps, azo-free dyes, which protect your baby's sensitive skin, and reusable packaging. And the features are so practical. For example, how many times have you been nervous that your baby will slip over while they're wearing a onesie because of obviously the material on their feet? Well, Bambi Mini's wriggly suits have the fold over cuffs on the feet to keep baby's feet warm, but also have non-slip grip feet for extra stability. The grip feet are available in sizes 6 to 12 and 12 to 18 months. They also have a cozy fit to show off those chunky thighs. They're not only super practical, but they're adorable too. Bambi Mini commissioned artists to design some bold new prints and colours for their wriggle suits, super singlets, superstar socks, and dribble bibs. Available exclusively at Chemist Warehouse stores across Australia, as well as Chemist Warehouse online. Check out the episode show notes to find out more on Bambi Mini Co.
Yeah, it's funny. I do a lot of couples counselling in my work, unintentional couples counselling. It's really, really common. I think it's almost, it's almost 100% of couples go through such strain. Like I said before, all of these things, these life stressors, they're peaking all at the same time. It's all well and good to say we're a team, but ultimately it is hard. And, if you don't have a 50-50 balance of work and domestic life, you can come to resent different things. I'm sure there are times when I have resented my wife for the fact that she can be at home and have time to herself. And she's resented me for being able to get up and go to work and have a house full of kids. So those challenges can be met. Again, I sound like a broken record, but having the right expectations, don't expect to lead the exact same life you led prior to children. If you play social basketball 3 nights a week, you're not going to be able to do that after kids arrive. It's just not feasible and it's not fair. So that's the first thing to remember. The second thing is that I think I think the most common mistake that couples make, and I'm going to focus in on the arrival of a second child. We've touched on this already, and that's the background to the question. The most common mistake is, and let's talk about an example of a nuclear family, a mum who's breastfeeding, a dad, and a second baby arrives. The most common thing that people do is mum looks after the newborn. The logical assumption is made, she's breastfeeding, so she's dealing with the newborn, and dad has toddler. And you become almost like single parents who live together. Ships in the night, you do newborn, I'll do toddler. And that is the exact wrong way to go about it, okay? Your roles are too divided. You do start to resent the other, but also the toddler is going to have a very, very predictable behavior deterioration when the newborn reaches 2 or 3 months of age. That's the duration of time. Psychology teaches us that a toddler enjoys playing with a new toy, and then they want to stick it in a box, put it in the cupboard, and move on to the next thing. Now, it's very hard to put a newborn into a box in the cupboard, so we need to figure out a way for everyone to work together. And the key here is what I call cross-parenting. That's where we break that assumed model of the separation of care, and the dad looks after the newborn, because really the only thing that a dad or a carer or a grandparent or another mum, the non-breastfeeding parent, the only thing they can't do is breastfeed. But every single other thing that you need to do to safely raise and nurture a newborn, everything can be done by another person. And so what that means is that you're freeing the birthing mother to rest, to recover, to replenish if she's breastfeeding, and you're giving the toddler access to that mother at her best. And so cross-parenting creates a wonderful sibling relationship. There's no concept of the newborn stole my mum, stole my cot, stole my dummy, stole my perfect existence where I had 200% attention. Now I've got 30% attention. And you really lay the foundations for a really happy, smooth, fluid family connection.
I've heard you provide that insight actually before, and it was such a head scratcher initially. I was like, but hold on, no, but mum has to be with newborns because breastfeeding and feeding and stuff. But then you're like, actually, you're right. Other than that, it's such a, I think most people out there, that is the way they would do it. So I feel like you've just kind of, turned that on its head, which makes a lot of sense. So I know those listening are probably, something to seriously think about. And I feel like this is a nice transition into my final question, which is about your upcoming book. And obviously you said it's a book for the baby number one, or the child that's expecting a new sibling. Is that correct? Talk to us a little bit more about that, and I guess some of the messages in that book.
Well, the key to my philosophy ultimately is that babies, newborns, are excellent communicators. They are wonderful communicators. It is us as parents and caregivers, we need to learn how to interpret their signs, their cues, what they're trying to tell us, why they're crying, why they're unsettled, what they need at any point in time. So that's my philosophy. Then we talked about cross-parenting. We talked about this evolving autonomy. We talked about the nature and psychology of a toddler brain. The greatest way to empower and involve a toddler is to get them hands-on. So I thought to myself, well, if I'm trying to teach parents to interpret baby signs, why not involve the toddler? Because the toddler can just as easily interpret those signs. And there's this beautiful thing that happens when a toddler is more hands-on and involved and a true participant in the raising of the newborn. They get this sense of ownership. So I always tell people, create a box. It can literally be a shoebox. And in there, build it with your toddler. Get them to decorate the outside. Get them to build it and put in spare nappies, nappy cream, wipes, a fresh onesie, whatever you might be using during a nappy change procedure. So when the baby cries, instead of you turning to the toddler saying, shh, wait, I'll come back to you, I've just got to change a nappy, as we often do, you turn to the toddler and you say, why is baby crying? And when you flip through this book, which ideally you've done prior to baby's arrival, the toddler will turn to you and will think of the 4 or 5 different options that may be causing that baby to cry. And they'll turn to you and they'll say, maybe baby needs a new nappy. And then you turn around and you say, that is such a great idea. Go grab your nappy box. And then the toddler toddles off, brings the box, and then together you change the nappy and you do everything together. Moments later or days later, whenever it may be, someone comes to your house, as happens 1,000 times a day when you've got a newborn, and says, oh, such a gorgeous baby. Now, what a lot of people try to do is deflect that compliment and say, oh, yeah, isn't Johnny so gorgeous as well? Now, that's not really honest, and a toddler can smell that a mile away. But if someone comes in and says, what a gorgeous baby, and your response is, yeah, Johnny changed his nappy before, or Johnny chose his ones, I love it. You get this toddler they stand a foot taller. When you compliment something that someone has had a hand in creating, they feel like it's a personal compliment. Yeah. And then they feel like they're part of something, they feel pride, and you're laying the foundations for a really strong sibling relationship because that toddler built that baby. That baby is walking because of what the toddler did. The baby is healthy and growing because of what the toddler did. So get the young one as hands-on and involved as possible. Never shush them, never berate them. Make sure that there's no major changes happening in the 3 months before or after a newborn's arrival. So, transition to a big bed, removing dummy, toilet training. We don't want to do any of those things around a newborn's arrival, lest it be considered theft by the baby. And ultimately, the book is all about getting them involved and making them feel like, you're tapping into their autonomy button. You are a really important part of this family. We can't do this without you. And you are just as important as mum or dad or grandma or the nanny, whomever it may be. And when you get them involved, they absolutely love it. And everyone reaps the benefits.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Like, as you're speaking, I'm smiling because you can just see that play out. Like, of course, like little toddlers feeling so thrilled with themselves, and you're feeling pretty chuffed that, you've enabled that situation. So, and look, I think it's amazing too to have resources, because I think when my children are 18 months apart, but I was kind of thrown in the deep end, and perhaps I wasn't looking hard enough for these resources, but to have, books for the children as well. And, and all of the expertise that, you certainly have and others out there have is just, it's just groundbreaking for us parents who really just feel like, Jesus, they didn't teach us this in school. Like, what have we gotten ourselves into?
I think you're right. I remember looking through bookshops and looking for toddler books and seeing, they were all about, what's happening to mummy. And it was all about the baby growing, and it was a little bit of anatomy, and it was all just a little bit irrelevant to the toddler's actual day-to-day functioning. Yeah. And so we wanted to build something, and credit to our amazing illustrator, Cora, because she really tapped into the life of a toddler and the sort of arrival of the newborn. So, you've got the toddler drawing at their table and then they notice a smell. And so it really talks to the toddler in the toddler's language. The toddler sees things and recognizing things that they will be doing. So it's all about focusing on the toddler. And that's why we wanted to create this, because it's not a book for mums. Yeah. It's not what's happening to mum, where's mum gone, what's happened. It's all about what's happening in the toddler's world and then how they can help to fix a problem, change a nappy, explain why the baby's crying, and, it's fun and it's sweet and it's silly, but there is actually a lot of practical advice there. And I think that I don't want to be, wishy-washy, but I genuinely believe that a toddler could have a very good amount to contribute. There's this one beautiful page where a baby starts crying and we can't figure out why. And the toddler realizes it's because there was a dog barking and that sudden sound woke the baby. So they really do have a meaningful contribution to make. And I want them to feel that.
I'm already thinking about who could I gift this book to? I've got so many friends that I'm like, I need to just start handing these out. So when is the book being released? When does it hit the stores?
So it is. It's out.
Oh, it's out now. Okay.
Yeah. I went into one of the Big W stores the other day and it was so lovely to see it on the shelf.
Oh, amazing.
Right up there next to this this Bluey book. So people are loving it.
Yes.
Great responses. We're so happy. So you can find it at all the bookstores, online, Booktopia as well.
Yes.
Loads and loads of places.
Oh, I love that. Okay, well, yeah, I'm on it then because that is literally the perfect gift, I feel. I've actually got a friend of mine who's expecting any day now. So the perfect, gift to add in with the other little, the onesie that I got. And it's just so beautiful and to your point, so practical. And it's not about the newborn. It's in fact just helping the family dynamic in general. So I love that. How can people find out more about you?
So you can head to Instagram. I'm always trying to drop helpful things, whether we're talking, right now we're talking about healthy hips and prior to that it was all about snot sucking. So really try to give as much practical advice for parents. We're talking, about not just newborns and babies, but also our sleep program goes all the way up to 5 years. Every now and then I'm trying to teach people about new research that's come out, even if we're talking about teenagers, young adults as well. So you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, head to drgolly.com. That's DRGOLLY. If you want to have a look at the sleep programs as well. And as I said, I'll give you guys some codes for your podcast if people are interested in the sleep program or the toddler toolkit as well.
That'd be amazing. And we'll pop all of those details in the show notes. Thank you so much again, Dr. Golly, for your time and for everything that you do to support us parents.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave us a rating or review, and share it with your friends. Want to contribute to the conversation? Hit us up on Instagram @Parenthood Pod and join our Facebook group. Until next time.
Thanks for listening.
The Parenthood Podcast would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we produce on, the land of the Wurundjeri people. We pay respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging.